Close your eyes for a second. No phone, no language, no yesterday, no tomorrow. You're crouching in Africa, 300,000 years ago. The fire is low. Smoke from the wrong plant drifts your way. You inhale, not on purpose, and something shifts. Your brain says one thing, loud and clear: do that again. That moment is where the story begins, because ever since then, humans have been chasing that feeling in every civilization we've ever built. So the real question isn't why smoking is bad. The real question is why humans ever started inhaling smoke at all. The answer starts 1 million years ago in Wonderwerk Cave, South Africa. Archaeologists found ash residue from a controlled fire inside a sheltered space. Not a wildfire, not an accident. A fire that was deliberately maintained and used daily. This wasn't Homo sapiens. This was Homo erectus. Smaller brain, heavier brow, zero written language. But they had fire. And every single night, they sat around it. Here's what most people never think about. Fire doesn't just produce heat and light. When organic matter burns, it releases chemical compounds, alkaloids, terpenes, volatile molecules that float in smoke and, when inhaled, interact with the human nervous system. Some are harmless, some are not. Some are profoundly psychoactive. Early humans didn't choose campsites based on nearby plant life. They chose based on shelter, water, safety. Which means sometimes the wood on the fire came from plants that released things their brains weren't ready for. The first time that happened, nobody understood it. Someone just felt different, lighter, strange, maybe frightened, probably both. They had no idea why. But here's the thing people forget about our ancestors. They were us, without the accumulated knowledge. They noticed patterns, they connected cause and effect. And somewhere, around some fire, one of them made the connection. That plant, that smoke, that feeling, that observation. Not a plan, not a decision, just an accident noticed by a curious mind, might be the most consequential moment in human history. But smoke wasn't the only thing fire was doing to the human brain. Something else was happening every single night. Here's something researchers discovered that almost never leaves academic papers. Fire didn't just feed us, didn't just protect us. It rewired how we sleep. Before fire, our ancestors slept like every other primate, in trees, in short fragmented bursts, always half alert. Sleep was a liability. You couldn't afford to go deep when something might eat you. Then fire arrived. With flames burning at the edge of camp, predators kept their distance. The dark, which had been lethal, became manageable. For the first time in our evolutionary history, a human body could lie on the ground and actually relax. And something shifted. Modern humans sleep less than almost any other primate. Chimps get around 10 hours, orangutans closer to 11. We average 7 to 8. But the quality is completely different. We spend dramatically more time in REM sleep, the deep phase linked to memory consolidation, emotional processing, and vivid immersive dreaming. Researchers at Harvard proposed that fire caused this. Once ground-level sleep became safe, evolution could optimize for depth over duration. A brain spending more time in states that were neither waking nor fully unconscious. And here's where it connects to everything else. REM sleep is neurologically an altered state. Your brain during REM looks almost nothing like your waking brain. Certain regions go quiet, others fire in patterns that don't happen during normal consciousness. You lose track of time. You experience vivid, emotionally overwhelming things that feel completely real while they're happening. The people sitting around those fires weren't just accidentally inhaling psychoactive smoke. They were also, every single night, experiencing the deepest altered states their nervous systems could produce. States that fire had made possible. Dreams were the first altered state. Fire made them possible. And when those same people woke from vivid, emotionally raw dreams, and then sat next to that same fire and breathed smoke that shifted their perception, the two experiences would have mapped onto each other in a way that felt significant. Not the same, but related. Both happened at the edge of the firelight. Both left you with the feeling that something important had occurred, even if you couldn't say what. The fire was the bridge between those two worlds. But what exactly was triggering those first waking experiences? The answer is already inside your brain. It's been there your whole life. Your brain contains something called the endocannabinoid system. It regulates mood, memory, appetite, stress response. Fundamental to how you function as a living organism. This system has receptors that respond to cannabinoids. Here's the part that should stop you cold. Those receptors did not evolve because of cannabis. They evolved for entirely internal purposes. Cannabis just happens to produce compounds that fit them almost perfectly. So the first time a human inhaled smoke from burning cannabis, and cannabis grows wild across large parts of Africa, Asia, and Europe, Their brain didn't have a confused reaction. It had a familiar one. The receptors were already there. The compound simply activated them in a way that was, to put it mildly, very noticeable. Noticeable enough to remember. Noticeable enough to try again. This isn't someone trying to make ancient history sound exciting. It's a legitimate hypothesis, backed by researchers across multiple fields. Given where early humans lived, exposure to psychoactive smoke wasn't a remote possibility. It was essentially inevitable. The question isn't whether it happened. The question is, when did they start doing it on purpose? We have a fairly specific answer. It comes from a burial site in the mountains. The Pamir Mountains, 500 BC. A burial site. Ancient wooden braziers, shallow bowls on legs, built to hold hot stones. Residue from cannabis plants. With unusually high concentrations of THC. This wasn't rope fiber. Wasn't industrial hemp. Someone specifically selected cannabis for its psychoactive potency and placed it at a ritual burial, deliberately, with enough knowledge of what they were doing that they chose the stronger variety. Modern chemistry confirmed it. We can test the residue. We know what was there. This is the oldest direct physical evidence of intentional smoking currently on record. Here's the problem with that sentence. Physical evidence requires physical survival. Organic material, plant fibers, wooden pipes, leather pouches, disintegrates. A few centuries in normal soil and it's gone. What we find at these sites isn't what existed, it's what happened to survive. Those are very different things. When we say the oldest evidence is 2,500 years ago, what we actually mean is the oldest evidence that lasted long enough for us to find. The practice itself is almost certainly far, far older. How much older? Try 12,000 years. In Utah. The Great Salt Lake Desert, Utah. A hearth 12,000 years old. Inside it, seeds from a wild tobacco species native to North America. Not scattered randomly, concentrated, in a pattern that suggests deliberate placement, no pipes, no pottery, just seeds, in a fire 12,000 years ago. That pushes intentional tobacco use back by thousands of years past previous estimates, and it raises a question you can't unhear once you've heard it. If people in North America were placing tobacco seeds into fires 12,000 years ago, what were people on other continents doing with their local psychoactive plants at the exact same time? Because 12,000 years ago, humans were everywhere. Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, Europe, Australia, different plants, same brain. A Greek historian described exactly what was happening, and nobody believed him for 2,000 years. Herodotus was a Greek historian writing in the 5th century BC. He traveled widely. He documented what he saw. And for centuries, scholars read him with a kind of respectful suspicion. Interesting observations, possibly embellished. One of those observations? The Scythians. He described them building small enclosed tents, heating stones until they glowed, throwing hemp seeds onto those stones and sitting inside breathing the smoke. He wrote that they howled with pleasure. Historians assumed he was exaggerating, probably describing a steam bath, adding drama to an otherwise dry account. Then archaeologists excavated Scythian burial mounds. They found bronze braziers. They found heated stones. They found hemp residue, exactly what Herodotus described. He wasn't dramatizing, if anything. He was underreporting. The man watched a group of Scythians get intensely high in a hemp-smoked tent and wrote about it as faithfully as he could, and for 2,000 years people decided he must have gotten it wrong. The lesson isn't about Herodotus. It's about how much of the ancient world we still misunderstand, and how often what we're confident we know turns out to be backwards. Now, tobacco, and why everything you think you know about it is reversed. Tobacco is native to the Americas, which means until 1492, the entire Old World had never encountered it. Columbus noted in his journal, within weeks of arrival, that the indigenous people he met walked around carrying small burning sticks, inhaling the smoke, exhaling it through their mouths and noses. His crew was baffled. His crew also started doing it within weeks. Of course they did. But tobacco use in the Americas wasn't new in 1492. Residue analysis in ancient pipes dates it back at least 3,500 years. Some researchers, looking at cultivation patterns in the Amazon basin, put it at 10,000 years or more. Here's what gets lost entirely. Tobacco in ancient America was not recreational. It was sacred. It opened communication with the spiritual world. Smoke was understood as a living carrier. It carried prayers upward and brought visions back down. Blowing smoke on someone was an act of blessing. A shaman who smoked wasn't relaxing, he was doing the most serious work imaginable. Tobacco was treated with the reverence you give something you consider genuinely powerful and genuinely dangerous. The idea of smoking while waiting for a bus, That's a European invention, a very recent one that required a specific kind of industrial machinery to even become possible. Before it was sacred, it may have been something more fundamental, a medicine. The Ebers Papyrus, ancient Egypt, approximately 1550 BC, one of the oldest medical documents ever found. It describes the deliberate inhalation of smoke from specific heated herbs as treatment for throat and respiratory conditions. The ancient Egyptians were treating respiratory problems by prescribing inhaled smoke. From our angle, that sounds absurd. From theirs, it was logical. If a plant has therapeutic properties and the lungs are the entry point, smoke is direct delivery. The lungs absorb compounds efficiently. You're essentially building an inhaler. We still do this. Asthma inhalers work on the same principle. Anesthetic gases work on the same principle. The delivery method survived. The burning part mostly didn't. Ancient Indian Ayurvedic medicine, over 3,000 years old, describes a formal practice called dhumapana, literally smoke drinking. Specific plants, specific conditions, specific preparation protocols, not improvised. A formalized medical system refined over centuries. Across ancient Greece, China, Mesopotamia, and India, and in every early documented civilization, there is evidence of deliberate therapeutic smoke inhalation, not as addiction, not as habit, but as medicine. In a world without surgery, without antibiotics, without almost anything we'd recognize, a treatment that worked sometimes was worth everything. But there's one more reason humans smoked, and it might be the oldest reason of all. Humans are social animals. We evolved in groups. Group cohesion. The ability to trust each other, to coordinate, to move as a unit wasn't a preference. It was survival. Modern neuroscience has found something striking. Shared rituals synchronize neural activity between participants. They measurably increase trust. They deepen group identity in ways that are biochemically real, not metaphorical. When a group of early humans sat together in an enclosed space and collectively entered an altered state through shared smoke, something was happening beyond what the compounds were doing to individual brains. The group was bonding in a way that was extremely hard to replicate through any other means available to them. Shared intense experience creates a specific quality of connection, mutual vulnerability, mutual trust, a sense of identity that extends beyond the individual. Anyone who's been through something difficult with other people understands this without needing a study to explain it. The ritual smoke circle wasn't just a gathering. It was social infrastructure. It was how you built the kind of trust that let you go into dangerous situations with other people and genuinely believe, they wouldn't leave you behind. That function is probably older than any of the others, older than medicine, older than spiritual use, because group cohesion predates both of those as a survival requirement. And then Europe got hold of tobacco and removed every bit of that context. Within decades of 1492, tobacco had spread across the old world. Within a century, it was traded globally. What indigenous Americans had incorporated into a carefully managed, deeply ritualized practice over thousands of years was turned, in European hands, into a commodity product in under 4 centuries. By the early 20th century, industrially manufactured cigarettes made tobacco consumption cheaper, more convenient, and more addictive than anything that had come before. Specific compounds were added to accelerate nicotine absorption and speed its clearance from the body, not accidentally discovering the addiction cycle, engineering it. The same plant, the same basic act, completely different relationship to it. A shaman selecting cannabis for potency and placing it on hot stones at a burial site, connecting the living to the dead through shared smoke, that person had almost nothing in common with a tobacco executive in 1960 signing off on campaigns targeting children. Both involved smoke. Almost nothing else was the same. So when did humans actually start smoking? The honest answer is, we're still working that out. The physical evidence takes us back 12,000 years with confidence. Exposure to psychoactive smoke from natural fires goes back much further, possibly to the first sustained use of controlled fire, 1 million years ago. What we know for certain, by the time any human civilization developed writing, smoking was already ancient, already ritualized, already embedded in medicine, spirituality, and social cohesion in ways that implied centuries of practice before anyone thought to write any of it down. The behavior predates agriculture. It predates pottery. It predates every civilization you've ever studied. And the drive underneath it, the drive to seek altered states, to cross the threshold between ordinary experience and something that feels larger, that appears to be a fundamental feature of human cognition, not a glitch. Ronald Siegel, a psychopharmacologist at UCLA, proposed that the pursuit of altered consciousness functions essentially as a fourth biological drive, alongside hunger, thirst, and sex. And it's not just humans. Elephants seek out fermented fruit. Reindeer in Siberia eat psychedelic mushrooms and then drink the urine of other reindeer who ate them first, because the active compounds survive intact. Reindeer doing drug recycling in Siberia. If this drive is that old, that widespread, that consistent across species, it doesn't make much sense to treat it as an aberration. Our ancestors didn't. They built systems around it, rituals, restrictions, meanings. They took something powerful and gave it a context that made it survivable. Then we took the context away. Next time you're near a bonfire and catch that smell, something shifts, something old. Your nervous system picks up a signal it's been processing for 100,000 years. A signal that once meant warmth, safety, community. The edge of a world that was trying to kill you, made briefly manageable by fire. The smoke hasn't changed. What changed is what we decided to do with it. And that chain of decisions, from the shaman's tent to the cigarette machine, is the distance between a thing that helped make us human and a thing that started quietly killing us. Same fire, completely different world.